Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 102, The Next Level. The podcast objectives are reveal the difference between the end times and the last days, reveal the three major end times milestones, reveal the timing around the last days, and analyze the time mystery. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. End times, the last days. In the most recent podcast, we established a foundation for understanding end times. Namely, we revealed how the end times began more than 2,000 years ago, and we used the models of the creative week and the creative day to prove it. Although we provided a baseline for understanding end times, we did not address the contemporary model of the last days. This is key to note, for the end times are not equivalent to the last days. This brings us to the question of the hour. Vis-a-vis, what is the difference between the end times and the last days? The answer: the last days represent the closing hours, i.e., the final years leading up to the three major end times milestones. This begs the question: what are the three major end times milestones? The answer can be found in the leading verses of the Olivet Discourse recorded in the Gospel. Matthew 24, 1 through 3. And going out, Yahushua went from the set apart place, and his taught ones came near to point out to him the buildings of the set apart place. And Yahushua said to them, do you not see all these? Truly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the taught ones came to him separately, saying, say to us, when shall this be? And what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? The three major end times milestones. The disciples asked the Messiah three distinct questions in this discourse. One, when shall this be? i.e., the destruction of Jerusalem. Two, what is the sign of your coming? And three, what is the sign of the end of the world? Now, here we have our first treasure box in this lesson and in this series. Specifically, these three questions represent the three major events associated with the end times, and the last days represent the years leading up to these events. Now, the three major end times milestones are: one, the destruction of Jerusalem; two, the second coming of the son of Adam, i.e., the Messiah; and three, the end of the world. Now, as you can see, this timeline reveals the three major end times milestones. The first milestone has occurred. You can see here the destruction of Jerusalem. And there are two other milestones that remain. Here, the second coming of Yahushua Mashiach and the end of the world. Now, this timeline shows how there are three occurrences of the last days, and each occurrence precedes one of the three major end times milestones. You see here the destruction of Jerusalem. And right before that destruction, you have the last days. Again, the second coming of Yahushua Mashiach, the son of Adam. And then before that, the last days. And then finally, the end of the world. And before that, the last days. As you can see by the timeline, we are currently living in the last days associated with the second coming of the son of Adam. So you see the year here, 2023, and beneath it, the last days. And we'll soon see our blessed Savior, and will reign with him for 1,000 years in a renewed earth. Yet there are two other occurrences of the last days, one which is past and one which is in the distant future, at the conclusion of the millennial reign and preceding the eternal future. Now, in summarizing this pivotal section, I would offer 3 key points. 1, there are 3 major end times milestones. These are recorded in Matthew 24, 1 through 3. 2, there are 3 occurrences of the last days, each occurring prior to the 3 end times milestones. And 3, we are currently living in the last days associated with the second end times milestone, that is, the second coming of the son of Adam. Understanding the time mystery. Now, it was crucial for me to establish this prophetic baseline early in this series, for the time mystery is one of the most complicated spiritual topics. At the same time, it is one of the most vital, for it is salvation critical. Here is why. The primary reason why many within the religious circuit will be lost is, quite simply, because they will not be prepared for these last days, for they have no idea that we are about to witness the second coming of the son of Adam. And the primary reason they are oblivious to this truth is because they do not understand the times and seasons associated with the 3 primary end times events. For this cause, they do not possess an accurate view of these last days. We know this because many have assigned various prophecies inaccurately. These suggest certain prophecies have been fulfilled that have yet to be fulfilled. They also suggest the inverse. They believe certain prophecies that have already been fulfilled are still waiting to be fulfilled. Alas, they are looking for prophecies to occur that have already taken place. Here's a question. How does this relate to my earlier assertion that understanding the end times is salvation critical? The answer: it's impossible to be saved in these last days if you are not prepared for what is coming. This speaks to a point I made in the most recent podcast. That is, many are living in an alternate reality founded upon deceptions, errors, and lies, and they are preparing for a future they will never have. Seeing as these are clearly outside the Father's will, how will they be saved? Will the Father surely save those who walk contrary to his will, having adopted a reality that reflects their personal desires and the defilement within their hearts? I think not. Therefore, seeing as there is no salvation outside of preparation and no preparation apart from knowledge, understanding the end times and the signs associated with these last days is salvation critical. Anyone telling you otherwise is a false prophet, and we do not hear them. This summation brings us back to the crux of this lesson, that is the time mystery. My dear friends, you must believe me. If you don't establish your understanding of the end times and the last days upon this foundation of truth, you will not be saved. This speaks to why many struggle to understand the prophetic word. For as they have misconstrued a vast array of critical end times events, it has become extremely difficult for them to undo the immense error many of us came into and some of us are yet holding on to. For that reason, I will invest a healthy amount of time exposing many of these errors in the process of revealing the truth. For I am led by the Spirit and armed with hundreds of scriptures, thousands if you can receive it. And he has revealed to me that this is the only way you will come to understand this complex time mystery. In closing, I want to briefly reiterate the first thing Peter writes concerning the time mystery. That is, beloved ones, let not this one matter be hidden from you. In like fashion, our loving master spoke to his disciples, saying, it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 13:11, Mark 4:11, and Luke 8:10. And if you still think this matter is not salvation critical, I ask you again to remember the flood. Remember the fault that caused every living soul to perish except for 8. The fault is simple. They did not know the time. And because they did not know the time, they were not prepared when the flood came, and it took them all away. My advice is simply this: don't let that be you. Now, here is the final word. The most important question you must ask in this day is, when shall these things be? We can prove this by analyzing the Olivet Discourse. To wit, the entire discourse focuses on when all the major end times events would occur and the signs we should follow to understand the seasons and the days we are living in. There's very little focus on why, who, how, what, or any other question. My dear friends, when our beloved Savior addressed this critical topic with his disciples, his main focus was the time factor and ensuring they knew when these things would come to pass. Seeing how we are his disciples and have been chosen, we must also come to understand the time factor. And we must appreciate how this is not the only mystery we must solve in our quest for salvation in these last days. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today and ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. Remember, where there is no conviction, there can be no faith. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. Next, if the Spirit is leading you and you have not signed up for our mailing list, you can go to www.transformationbytruth.com to sign up today. We'll alert you as soon as podcasts are posted, and we'll share our presentations, notes, and other materials at no cost. It is for your edification. And most importantly, you will be connected to me and those who have joined themselves to this ministry as we prophesy and align current events with the prophetic word. These discussions are taking place outside of this podcast ministry. Therefore, if the Spirit is leading you, and only if the Spirit is leading you, I encourage you to come and see. You will be in good spiritual company. Lastly, if you have any questions, please submit them via our contact form on our website. If you have any comments, please share those on the video page for this podcast, also on our website. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 102, The Next Level. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 104, Building Blocks of Prophecy. I'll post this podcast on Friday, April 14th, 2023. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.